Super Mike World 2 is unsurprisingly the most popular Mike World installment. It's extremely polished, very fun, and in general one of the best games on Scratch. But how about you take a polished game, and make a modification of it? Enter the boss campaign. And has a small array of new moves that make it feel very fun and different. The day of the mod's release came and it quickly dawned on runners, this guy was obviously going to be faster. They have broke it wide open, and made it well known that boss was going to be way more faster than his nemesis. This is the world record history of Super Mike World 2 World Records, as the boss. On May 15, 2024, the Islander would show off a project of his that he was proud of. This would be a straight-up full game modification that allowed a user to play as the boss, or the final boss of Mike's campaign. This was a sneak peek, showing off boss's new power-up differences and a new move, the double jump. While the Mike World 2 speedrunning community wasn't very big, support did show as people were excited to play as this character. For a while, you could play as Mike and defeat the boss. Now, you could play as the boss and defeat Mike. A few hours later, with one more sneak peek, and the remix was released to the public. While not having everything finished, the mod was fun as the speedrunning community was enjoying it. But what about speedrunning the boss? How would he fare versus Mike? Now, boss is a bit more different than Mike. He has a double jump, and has different interactions with power-ups and Mike, or boss's replacement. Upon boss's release, people weren't too sure if boss would be faster or slower than Mike. But with the release, people could test out strategies with boss. So, literally on the day upon release, E1_0, one of the best Mike World players ever, did a speedrun of boss. The original hub route of bosses was derived from Mike's world record hub route. So first was level 2, Freezy Breeze. It's a simple starting level, having wind mechanics. Some currents you have to go down, while some push you up. Holding up allows for more aerial speed. After completing the level, it was on to level 3, where we see our first small little optimization. Normally before entering level 3 as Mike, you take a trampoline to bounce to a platform where level 3's teleporter is. But as boss, you can position yourself onto a slope for more height, and do a double jump, but not just any double jump. This is an ump. An ump is essentially a higher double jump. It's very simple yet extremely important. While it wasn't known at the time, the inputs were very simple. Z plus up in order to gain a bit more height than a regular double jump. Anyhow, we are onto Key Coin Cavern. Key Coin Cavern as Mike was renowned for being one of the hardest stages in the game along with Towering Trunk. It is one of the biggest reset points for Mike runners to this day. As boss though, it's just a tiny bit easier thanks to a few optimizations to cut out a few tenths of a second. However, the level has its downsides, such as the very end where extremely dangerous spikes could send you back down. Next up is Cozy Coast, meant to be the first level of the game for non-speedrunner. This level in general is just completely free, it doesn't really have anything major going with it. Despite it being quite an easy level, E1 got hit twice, losing him less than a second. And it's onto by far the most well-documented and one of the toughest stages in the game. Towering Trunk. First, let's look at the Boost Flower. The Boost Flower is a flower that allows you to boost high into the air, increasing both the X speed and Y speed of the user. This makes most skips easier in return for more airtime. Ohioless is the biggest example as you can literally skip having to set up for Ohioless, which saves around a second over trying for Ohioless. We're on to the final stage, Sky High Sprint. You race Robo Mike to see who wins first, but obviously when we are talking about world records, E1 absolutely beat Robo Mike in the race. As for the stage itself, Boss gets a quirky little mechanic. If you press space, you can shrink. This allows the player to go through trampoline pathways that would normally be impossible to go through at normal size. The level in general contains a lot of somewhat dangerous sideways trampolines that can screw someone over, but it's very rare. But then, E1 completed all 6 levels. It's onto the final stage in the game, the showdown. It starts off with simple platforming, but E1 missed a ump to skip having to use the trampoline. And then it's onto the boss, Mike. Unlike in Mike's campaign where you have to just jump on boss is automatically equipped with a temporary fire flower to hit Mike from afar. But if you get hit, you lose the power-up. But still, he was able to keep the fire flower for the whole fight, closing out for a new world record. For our sake, IGT is a bit clunky, so we will be using RTA for the remainder of the video. He set a time of 4 minutes and 37 seconds, the first world record of boss. This run was unfortunately slower than the current Mike world record at the time, which was a 4:34 by Sergio. But even with this one run, with literally several mistakes spread all over, boss was still just 3 seconds behind Mike, which is insane to think about it. Casually upon boss's release, he already had competition with Mike's world record. So theoretically, boss can be faster. Runners just needed to discover a bit more with boss and he might be ready to destroy the Mike world record. For the rest of the day, players such as E1 and Maxi Memes would experiment with boss, not knowing what they would uncover upon the first day. After expanding upon their findings, E1 would practice, then do a run the day after the last world record he set. But this run would absolutely demolish the old record. It wouldn't just make boss faster than Mike, it would completely make Mike look like a snail compared to boss. On May 16th, E1_0 would set a time of 4:15. This run is about to get way more technical, and it's literally shown in the first 8 seconds of the run. In Freezy Breeze, if you jump and then do a precise ump, you will be able to touch the air currents and make your way up. This in turn saves nearly 3 seconds compared to how you play it normally. After that, E1 was able to easily hit the ump first try to get to level 3, or Key Coin Cavern. And this is where another optimization was found, this time at the end of the stage. If you damage boost onto this spike, then jump off the platform and do an ump, you'll be able to get up where this blue trampoline is. If you're able to do this strat quickly enough, you can use the iframes to go through these spikes, making the ending of the section easier. But E1 did screw up some of it. Skipping Cozy Coast, Towering Trunk was next with a new funny little strategy. Maxi Memes found that you can double jump out of a boost, which most likely wasn't intended. This allows you to give your boost a boost. The biggest instance here is shown once again near the end. When you get on this exclamation mark block, you can short hop into a spike, and then boost before umping. You can do this again at the end to skip a tiny bit of walking. This can also save around a good 2 to 3 seconds. But those are nothing compared to what's next. Because in Sky High Sprint, E1 would use an incredibly time-saving bug in the game. These are teeny clips. Teeny clips are an oversight with how shrinking mechanics work. If you shrink and run into a corner, then immediately grow back to normal size, you'll clip into both the ground and the wall, causing boss to just walk through walls. This allows you to skip small parts of Sky High. Doing a teeny clip in this area can save a good 2 seconds. And there's another teeny clip, but this one is just straight up incredibly important, saving up to 5 seconds if done quickly. And 5 seconds in any category is absolutely huge. You'll see what I mean later in the video. But now, we are on to Mike. Mike is pretty simple, you just throw spikes the first phase, and then just hover on him on the wall on the second phase. However, E1 was worried about one thing, the early cycle. Now in order to get to phase 2, you for some reason need 5 hits by the third turnaround. You see that Mike delays for a bit to check this goal. If you messed up and get 5 hits before the delay, Mike will go into phase 2 and cling into the wall. This not only makes the fight harder because you now have an extended phase 2, if you're too far away like E1 usually is, this early cycle can genuinely kill a run. To combat this, E1 would jump on Mike right after the hit count check in order to not get the early cycle. And finally, after grabbing the necklace, E1 got a time of 4:15.185, new world record by 21 seconds. What was the current Mike world record on May 16th? 4:31. So, Boss was now 16 seconds ahead of Mike, and it only took a day for Boss to get to that level. You could see that Boss had a lot of potential, and could possibly go way lower than a 4:15. So, 2 days later, E1 ran Boss again. Let's start in Freezy. Due to a premature down press to get down, E1 slowed down for a bit and lost 0.3. In Cavern, he got hit by this spike before ducking off the ground, losing him some more time. Thankfully, E1 got the ending strategy quickly and didn't lose too much, only losing 0.4. But this is where we see something different. Normally, you'd fall off this platform to go straight to level 1. But with Boss, if you time a precise you can make it up to Sky High's platform without having to use trampolines. So, you'd now have to play Cozy Coast last instead of Sky High Sprint. This new hub route can save a good half second off of Mike's hub route. Speaking of Sky High, it was okay. He did the first teeny clip in a different spot, and implemented a precise where a red trampoline is. Then, E1 entered Towering. What he didn't know is that he was going to get a godly Towering Trunks. It was very strong, so well done, in fact it saved his run. He not only golded the stage, he was back in the lead by -0.5. And in Cozy Coast, he got a huge -1.1 gold in Cozy Coast. This was a huge run for a chance of a pretty good world record cut. All there was for E1 to complete was Mike. And luckily, Mike was very good, and as a result, new world record. 4:10.733, a new world record by a nice 4 seconds. But literally on the same hour, E1 would set a 4:09.083, the first sub-4:10 RTA in the game's history. The run started fine with a +0.0 time loss in Freezy. By the end of Key Coin though, E1 saved a second in the stage via not screwing up on the third coin grab, plus a really well executed rest of the stage. But in Sky High Sprint, E1 was now 2.2 seconds ahead. How come? Well, it wasn't just because it was also well executed. E1 decided to skip using this red trampoline, instead replacing the trampoline with an that saves nearly a full second. In Towering, possibly due to a tiny mistake at the start, he lost 0.4. However, 4:09 was still easily obtainable if Boss went well. And by Showdown, E1 was still -1.7 ahead of the world record, having a shot of a 4:09.0x range. Boss went well, letting him close out the run for the first 4:09 RTA in Mike World 2 history. Now Boss was getting just absurd. He was getting more than 10 seconds ahead of Mike, and there's already been so much discovered with him in just a few days after release. But, would any new runners emerge? After all, E1 was doing most of the world records. Well, just 40 minutes later, that question would be answered by the Mike world record holder who was Scratchy Speedrunner. On this day, Scratchy Speedrunner was streaming attempts to beat E1's 4:09. And during that stream, he'd get on a good run. Into Key Coin, Scratchy was a good 0.9 ahead of his personal best, which was a 4:12 at the time. In Key Coin though, Scratchy went for a more safer path to collect the third coin, but in exchange for losing some time. In Towering Trunk, however, Scratchy did something amazing. A 15.9 gold on Towering, on pace for a low 4:09, just like E1's pace. He managed to keep the -3 seconds going into Boss. If Boss didn't go terribly, then Scratchy could probably get world record, but just barely. Thankfully, Mike was compliant, resulting in a new world record of 4:08.622, a 0.4 improvement on E1's world record. So, with how many runs were being submitted for boss any percent plus how many tricks were getting discovered, you'd expect this category to have healthy competition. Well, you can figure it out with this. Despite this being 2 months, this was pretty interesting. You saw that Boss was set up for being quite a popular character and would have gotten a world record every few days or weeks, but then this hit. Rather it was because of Boss being very hard, Scratchy's world record, or just because of Robo Mike and Mike's world record being improvable. Whatever the case was, Boss any percent lay dormant. It seemed like people just wanted to move on, even though Boss was just in his early stages of speedrunning. But then, one runner came back. On July 31st, E1_0 would boot up Super Mike World 2 boss campaign, pull out his live split, and attempt to finally break the dry spell. And this would go down as the longest attempt session E1 has ever done. His first very promising run was on attempt 157. Remember, this was also de-rust, as E1 almost completely forgot to play most of Boss's campaign. The only thing he really cared about was a good pace out of Key Coin. And in Key Coin, he got an OK -0.0. It can be worse. But then in Towering Trunk, E1 got an absolutely insane time. This is because of some discoveries he decided to implement. See, compared to Mike's boost, Boss's boost flower shoots him insanely high, which loses time. So, E1 decided to do this strategy at the start of the stage, a boost plus a precise ump. Then, at this spike, he decided to replace a boost with an ump, saving more time. As a result, he saved a very nice -0.4 on Towering Trunk, also golding the stage. To make the pressure even more high, E1 got a Cozy Coast gold because of this jump before playing the level. This was an absolutely insane pace, and could get world record. And then he started the showdown. It seemed to be going well, until... It was such a good pace only to be ruined due to a very early left turnaround. E1 still closed out the run with a 409, which was very good, but it wasn't even PB. After this, E1 wanted to practice Boss. So that's what he did, practice Boss. He needed this because Boss is one of the hardest levels in general in the run, and combine that with how rusty E1 was and you got him probably resetting a lot more on Boss. But in the middle of his unrecorded practice session, E1 would find a pretty large time save on this Boss. It was one of the first new discoveries in Boss in quite a while, and it can save up to 0.4 seconds against a usual Boss. Introducing the 9-hit strat. The 9-hit strat essentially means, get 9 hits on Mike barely before Phase 2 starts. To do it, you must time your fireballs in a way so that just before Mike enters Phase 2, you can just barely get an extra hit on Mike before he clings onto the wall. You can then finish him off right before he even moves an inch, and save up to 0.4 to 0.8 against a really good Boss. A time save especially like this would be very helpful for E1's de-rust runs. After discovering this in practice, he would do another run later the same day, determined to get the world record. By Key Coin, the main stage he was worried about, he was a decent -0.1 ahead of his PB. Next was Sky High. It was very well done despite the ending losing him some time. -0.3 wasn't bad. Just 3 more splits to go. In Towering however, he was bumping into walls a bit and got a slow spike jump. As a result, E1 was now 0.2 behind. This wasn't looking too good. Thankfully, Cozy Coast out of all of the stages managed to save nearly a tenth off of his pace. Was it possible to world record here? Maybe. If E1 managed to get the 9-hit strat, then he could barely get it. Once he entered the arena, E1 would start timing his spike balls precisely. Once he skipped the early cycle, he would have to pray that he would get the timing needed to just barely get the 9th hit. He absolutely got it. E1 was able to keep it together and beat his PB. But he didn't know if he got world record. So, with the help of DMing Maxi memes, they would retime it. And suddenly, Maxi would DM E1 with this message. 66 hundredths of a second off of the world record. But you know what? E1 did not care at all. He was going to get the world record no matter what. And literally less than an hour later. (407.104), the first world record in over 2 months, and was a huge improvement. So, how come? How did he get such a good run and get a towering gold? First, he was able to save a plus 0.3 pace in key coin, but this was mainly due to him changing timing a bit. Over the next 2 stages, Sky High and Towering, he managed to get the pace to minus 0.9. This was actually quite a promising pace, with the last 3 stages being near mistakeless. To make it even better, Cozy Coast golded again, which was very surprising. All there was is the showdown. E1 just prayed he wouldn't screw up big time on Mike. And there it was, finally. E1 was very content with this run, as it was very well executed and would be a bit hard to go against. But still, even with this really good run, E1 wasn't done. No, now he was going for 406, and possibly lower. It'd be a lot harder, but if he cut down on mistakes, he could get a time really good. So, a day after his personal best, E1 would do another run. The run started very simple and freezy, gaining minus 0.3 seconds. He managed to keep this exact pace to Sky High, but E1 did bleed a few thousandths of a second on key coin. But in Towering, E1 got a huge 1.2 second gold in the stage, and for good reason. He found that instead of trying to ump over the spike, you can ump on the spike's platform to take damage, before boosting. This sets you up just enough so that you jump off the platform earlier and can boost without bumping into the ceiling tiles. In Cozy Coast, however, he unfortunately lost a tenth, possibly due to him walking on this slope. Yes, that's how much of a difference a simple mistake can do, but since he was still minus 1.4, it was not only 406 world record pace, it was 405 pace. He just had to nail 9 hit strat. He nailed it. After that, the rest of the run was free. He got the insane time of 405.718, smashing his goal of 406. Now this run would be tough, as he quite literally saved time in Freezy Breeze, through Towering. Only 1 time save in the entire run. After this, E1 wouldn't run for a bit. But during this small window of time, a new boss runner would appear. But he wasn't new in this game. No, he was one of the former world record holders of Mike. You might have heard his name appear somewhere in this video. That's right, it was Sergio. Sergio wasn't too keen on doing boss runs. Being a lot more difficult of a character, it would take a while to learn everything there was with boss. However, he did hold the 100% world record as boss with a 508, so Sergio did have some sort of experience to start at. So, for the next few days, he would grind out a very good second place. He wanted another high 405, just like E1's world record. Unfortunately, Sergio missed the 9 cycle, and just barely missed his goal with a 4:06.048. He was very much soul-crushed, and you could see his frustration in the description. But despite the obviously sad moment, Sergio wasn't done. No, he was still going to push forward, as all people should do. He never gave up, and just a few days later, he'd get on another run. The run had a pretty good start right off the bat, getting -0.2 out of Freezy. He continued to pick up the pace, managing to get -1.1 ahead of his personal best and nearly a full second ahead of the world record. Unfortunately, he lost 0.6 in towering mainly due to missing a trampoline jump. But it could have been worse because he was able to hit a new trick, Sumpless. So, his only time save was Mike. He was still a tiny bit ahead of world record, but if he was able to save the run via hitting the 9 cycle, he could get a huge record cut. Finally, Mike World 2 boss Any Percent had a third world record holder. Mike was actually extremely clutch, as Sergio pressed left for too long, so he had to damage boost onto Mike to continue hitting him. Despite the time loss, it was still a new world record by -0.8. So now, Sergio was the world record holder, and E1 himself was very proud of Sergio. But funnily enough, this record would be bested by E1 just a day later. E1's run started extremely strong in Key Coin Cavern, getting a gold in the stage. He was already -0.8 ahead of his PB and he wasn't even halfway through the game. Despite a good sky high, he still lost 0.3 in the stage, but it was fine, he still had time to save in towering with Sumpless. Sumpless is a significant time save where instead of damage boosting off of a spike, you can get to around the edge of this platform, and then boost before umping, saving around 0.8 compared to old strat. Because of Sumpless, plus getting this really hard trampoline ump, he managed to get a huge gold, saving 1.1 on one split alone and golding towering. He was nearly 2 seconds ahead of his personal best. To make the pace even more incredible, Cozy Coast golded. He was now 1.8 seconds ahead of his personal best, on pace for an incredible high 4:03. He was very under pressure, all he had to do was close it out. Unfortunately, he fumbled the ending, losing his Fireflower. He still got an incredible 404.101. He wasn't disappointed in any way even though he lost 403 potential, half of his run were golds anyway, so this would still be incredibly hard to go against. E1 was incredibly proud of this time, and he knew this would most likely stand for a small bit. But with this run came potential, 403 was on its way, and it was only 0.2 off of the barrier. It'd probably take a lot though to get a run past these 3 golds. But E1, just a few hours later on August 5th, he would start doing Mike World 2 attempts as boss for the 403. And literally on the first run of the day, he would get on this run. .403.408. This is where the current Super Mike World 2 Boss World Record stands today. Boss as shown in this video is very, very different from Mike and has so much more tech than his nemesis. Mike has been optimized for over a year, and Boss shatters all of that and is over 20 seconds ahead of Mike. Passionate Mike runners have went out of their way to optimize Boss, and in just 2 months, thanks to old Mike runners who know his own optimizations, Boss has been optimized already. 402 is on its way and it's only half a second away, and others have been looking for possible other barriers. From E1's domination both back then and now, to Scratchy Speedrunner's world record, and Sergio's own attempts at beating E1 for the first time, it's just incredible how much effort can be put into a remix of a game out of all things. This has been the history of Super Mike World 2 World Records, as the boss. Thank you for watching. Sorry for not uploading a video in so long, it was a case of burnout. I do have another video idea and I will put it in the works soon. See you in the next video.